Tactical awareness is defined by an athlete's capacity to perceive the events of the game and thus select and adapt and perform a physical response to a stimulus. The dynamic systems approach is a theoretical framework in motor learning that theorizes that systems in the body are constantly interacting with variables. The dynamic systems approach rejects the hierarchy or linear view of the cognitive systems theory. The dynamic systems approach incorporates the dynamic systems theory and the ecological model. The two central concepts of the dynamic systems theory are constraints and self-organization. Constraints are subdivided into task, learn, and environmental, where the ecological model focuses on the central concepts of perception, action, coupling, and how performance and achievements affect an athlete.
Through analysis of my volleyball and the completion of GPAI, I determined that my weak specialised movement sequences are set, as in the recorded data I have 5 ineffective sets compared to only 1 effective set. I gave myself a rating of 1 out of 5 for the set, which is the lowest score when compared to the other specialised movement sequences. It is also noteworthy that I used effective decision making only once in the entirety of the game, therefore this can also be considered one of my weaknesses. I've chosen to evaluate my set against the Volleyball Australia definition of an effective set, which is the ball that's flight is between the 2 antennas and the net in the attack line, whilst also maintaining height that is above the net. Whilst comparing my set to a professional set, one of the main differences is my tactical limitation of not getting the ball to the hitters. My tactical limitation ties into the movement strategy of using front court setters to implement attack in the principle of play of setting of attack, with the body and movement concept of quality movement and space awareness. I identified a psychological rate limiter of confidence and poor technique that inhibited my performance and acted as a learner constraint. Another rate limiter to my performance was rushed or poor decision making. In 2003, Dr. Tim Hopper produced the 4R model to understand the principles of decision making. The 4 stages being read, recognize and respond, react and recover. My weakest component is the read phase. As seen in the video, I do not read the play quick enough to recognize that the ball is coming to me as a setter. Therefore, I have to act at the last minute, making me ineffective at the specialized movement sequence and ultimately at the movement strategy of using front court setters to implement attack. When looking at my ability to perform the movement strategy of using front court setters to implement attack, it's evident that I do not have a high level of attunement, as I am unable to recognize the affordances given to me. This can be seen in the video where, despite the ball entering the front court at a height that is suitable for me to set, I do not move. I am unable to recognize that I have been afforded the opportunity to perform the specialized movement sequence of the set. My lack of attunement also speaks to the learner constraint and rate limiter of poor rush decision making. To tag my tactical limitation, I devised a constraint-based activity. Carl Newell theorized the implementation of learner task environmental constraints are interdependent and elicit particular movement in response. In other words, as a result of task learner environmental constraints, my body self-organized to produce a certain tactical strategy. To help me overcome my tactical limitation of not getting the ball to the hitter, I implemented a task constraint of 3v3, where the setter must get the second ball every time the ball goes over the net can be caught. An environmental constraint of playing half court on an inside court was also implemented. The task constraint has allowed for me to improve on my principles of decision making, as the catch slowed the speed of the game, allowing for me to potentially overcome my learner constraint of poor rush decision making, as the slow-paced game allows for an athlete to read the affordances given to them. These constraints were implemented to see what tactical strategy would emerge. In the first 4 minutes, it can be seen I had 3 ineffective sets whilst only having 1 effective set. These sets were ineffective as they did not go to the hitter's optimal position. They instead either went behind the attack line or over the net. This speaks to a lack of quality of movement, in particular the components for accuracy, effect, efficiency, and force development. The second 4-minute block saw a little to no change in the effectiveness of my set, with still having 6 ineffective sets and only 1 effective set. The next 4-minute block saw a drastic change in my performance, now with me having 5 effective sets and only 1 ineffective set. As seen in the GPAI, my effectiveness score increased from 1 to 4. Whilst analysing the footage, it is evident a new tactical strategy emerged. Now when setting the ball, I get under the ball, face the direction I want the ball to go and set. An outcome to my new tactical strategy is that my effective to ineffective set ratio was 4 to 1 compared to the previous 1 to 6. This is a massive 83% decrease in the number of ineffective sets, while simultaneously the effective sets increased by a staggering 75%. Another outcome to my tactical strategy brought about by self-organisation is that my new set now showcases the body and movement concepts of quality of movement better than it did before, mainly the components of accuracy, force summation, effect, and efficiency. In addition to this, my tactical strategy has the outcome that my space awareness, especially my use of general space, has improved. This is evident now that the projectile motion of the ball is within the space between the attack line and the net. This leads to the implication that my team's hitter now have a better opportunity to hit and simultaneously improve my team's ability to score. Another implication of my tactical strategy is throughout the duration of the constraint-based activity, I improved in my ability to read the play. In other words, an outcome of my tactical strategy is that I improved in the principles of decision-making. This outcome can be corroborated by what the secondary literature states should happen. When the speed of the game slows, it allows for an athlete to perceive stimuli more effectively. The outcome and implication of my tactical strategy were reaffirmed as it was implemented a second time during the second attempt at the constraints-based activity, the tactical strategy that emerged was the same as in the original. I continued to get under the ball, face the direction of my intended projectile motion, and perform the specialized movement sequence as set. Throughout the whole 15 minutes of the second attempt, I performed 13 effective sets, whilst only performing 2 ineffective sets. And the outcome to my tactical strategies, I have significantly improved in the principal decision making. I have improved at all aspects of Hopper's model. This can be seen in the primary vid data. As I've read that the ball is being caught, it's going to be past me. I recognize the affordances of the ball as a high pass into the front court. Thus I respond by preparing to set the ball by moving so I am under the ball, facing the way of my intended projectile motion, as stated in my practical strategy. I react lastly by perceiving where the hitter is, which is an improvement in space awareness, and finally I perform the set which goes to the hitter. I recover by standing back in this setting position, ready to read the stimulus. A massive limitation to my tactical strategy is it does not persist when going back to an authentic game situation. As can be seen in GPI complete after another authentic game, I had 3 ineffective sets and only 2 effective sets, which is a significant decrease. The tactical strategy was not present in an authentic game as seen in the primary video data. The ball goes over the net. With my learner constraint and rate limiter of poor rush decision making still present, as the extra time afforded to me as a result of the task constraint is removed. This speaks to another limitation to my tactical strategy in terms of the ecological model. This speaks to my continued lack of achievement to recognize the affordances of volleyball game when there is nothing slowing the speed of the play. In practical terms, this means that I'm still not able to recognize opportunities for me to perform the specialized movement sequence as set. Thus, a suggested development and modification to my tactical strategy is instead of facing sideways, I should look back into the backcourt, as shown as the professional setter does in secondary video data, and rotate the direction of the intended projectile motion in the air. This proposal can be corroborated by sports scientist George Stones, who says that athletes should maximize the stimulus that they can receive. In other words, this would help me read a greater number of stimulus, referring back to Hopper's model. Further, it can be seen that an outcome of tactical strategies that only sit the outside hitter, thus a limitation is that it's predictable for the other team, and they start to block the outside hitter. I should therefore modify my tactical strategies so that alternate which hitter my set goes to. This suggested modification can be corroborated by Karch Killery, who's the head coach of Volleyball USA, who stated that a variation in attack is essential as the opposition is continuously looking for ways to prevent the most likely course of action. Thus, for me to be more effective at the movement strategy of using front court setters to implement attack, I need to modify my tactical strategy to vary between where the projectile motion of my set goes, thus making me more effective at the body movement concepts of space awareness and quality movement and the components of effect, efficiency, force, and use of court space. Overall, my current tactical strategy is somewhat effective. However, to implement my proposed developments, maintenance, and modifications to my tactical strategy, it's proposed that I manipulate task learn environmental constraints to progress my constraints-based activity, so through self-organization, I become better at setting of attack. For example, I can manipulate task constraints so that there is only a catch on serve receive, but the setter must still get the second ball. Therefore, I'm slowly increasing the speed of the game so that it's more authentic. As head coach of New Zealand Rugby, Ian Foster states the closer to simulating a real game environment, the more an athlete progresses. Thus, through manipulation of task learn environmental constraints, and as a result of self-organization, the implementation of modifications to tactical strategy, my effectiveness at using front court setters to implement attack may further improve as I become more effective at the body and movement concepts of quality, movement, and space awareness, and I become more effective at the principles of decision making. To evaluate my volleyball performance, I have to select the body movement concepts of quality, movement, and space awareness to analyze my ability to set up attack and defend against attack. I would say that I'm a somewhat effective volleyball player for my team by analysis and evaluation of the principles of plays, movement strategies, and body movement concepts. I've chosen the principle of play of setting up attack to evaluate my volleyball with a focus on the movement strategy of using front court set to implement attack. Whilst playing in the set position, I am somewhat effective at the specialized movement sequence of the set. An outcome of my set is that I get a nice high ball to the hitters. However, a limitation is that sometimes the ball is not in the most optimal position on the court for the hitter, as it sometimes goes over the net or is back of the attack line. This speaks to the body movement concepts of space awareness and quality of movement, in particular the components of general space, accuracy, effect, and efficiency. The limitation implicates the ability of my team's hitters to score, as my sets do not assist them. Another specialized movement sequence that I use to display the movement strategy is my pass to the setter. I am somewhat effective at the specialized movement sequence, with a good percentage of them entering the front court. An outcome of this is that it gives the setter a chance to get the second ball, ultimately leading to the hitters being able to attack the opposition court. This makes me effective at the body movement concepts of quality movement and the components of accuracy and effect. When Tasha faces struggling judging where the ball is going out, an implication is to end up touching a ball that will be going out or not getting to a ball that will be going in. This makes me ineffective at the body movement concept of space awareness. I am ineffective at the specialized movement concept of the hit. An outcome of my hit is that it doesn't get over the net. This becomes my limitation in the lack of accuracy, force, effect, and efficiency, and the quality of movement. This in turn implicates my team's ability to score. Overall, I am somewhat effective at the principle of play of setting up attack and the movement strategy of using front court set to implement attack. I've chosen the principle of play of defending against attack and the movement strategy of defending against opposition attack. This can be seen in the specialized movement sequence of serve receive. I effectively use the components of general spaces. When I am the outside hitter, I transition into backcourt for serve receive. An outcome of this is that my team are now more effective at the body movement concept of space awareness as we cover more space. However, my serve receive in general is only somewhat effective, as the limitation I face is that I'm ineffective at the body and movement concept for quality movement, especially the components of accuracy and effect. This is because sometimes my serve receive does not go to the setter, with some of them going over their net. An implication to my limitation is that I'm giving the opposition a free ball, in which they can set up attack. Another limitation to my serve receive is that sometimes I'm ineffective with the body movement concept of space awareness, and consequently miss the ball, leading to the outcome that my team concedes a point. And the specialized movement sequence that I perform under the principal player defending against attack is the block. I'm somewhat effective at the specialized movement sequence as a result of my transition to the net. This makes me effective at the body movement concept of space awareness and the components of the use of general space, leading to the implication that I'm able to block if the ball comes over the net. The limitation I have, however, is that I'm ineffective at the body movement concept of quality movement, especially force and effect, as the height of my vertical jump limits my ability to block. This implicates my team's ability to stop the other team from scoring, as I only am somewhat effective at blocking. Overall, I am somewhat effective at defending against attack, whilst looking at the movement strategy of defending against opposition attack.